Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day, wherever you are, to tune in to our latest edition of the podcast. We've got a lot to talk about today. Logan Purcell's going to be joining me in a little bit. We're going to break down the Cavs' most recent week. They have a bit of a road trip coming up, so we'll take a look into that. We'll also get into the Indians and their most recent set of home games. They've had a lot of home games, so a lot for I and Logan to dissect. We also are going to talk about the upcoming NFL draft, which, guess what, is where? Right here in Cleveland, Ohio. So we're going to get you covered on that. Also going to keep you updated with the Premier League as well as the MLS, which is getting back into action. I have a new intro music for you this week, so let's see how it goes. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our latest edition of the one and only Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show on NordoniaHills.news. I am your host, Darius Sethna, and the Cleveland Sports Show begins right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. As I mentioned, Logan Purcell will be joining us in a few minutes here. We're going to break down the Cavs, the Indians, and the NFL draft as well. So very excited to talk about all of that. But first, let's get you caught up on your sports fact of the day. And we have some stuff to talk about in our sports. We actually have two birthdays to celebrate today, so let's get you rolling with that. Happy birthday first to current NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. It is his 59th birthday today. We also have another NBA birthday to celebrate. It's former San Antonio Spurs player and obviously a legend in NBA history, Tim Duncan. That's right, Tim Duncan spending his entire career with the San Antonio Spurs. It is his 45th birthday today. Some great accolades of Tim Duncan include he was a 5-time NBA champion, all with the San Antonio Spurs in 1999, 2003, 2005, 2007 against our Cavs, and then in 2014. Also was a 3-time Finals MVP in his first 3 Finals appearances in 99, 03, and 05. Tim Duncan was also the NBA Most Valuable Player in back-to-back years in 2002 as well as 2003. He's a 15-time NBA All-Star. Actually was an All-Star his rookie year in 1998, and then from 2000 to 2011, as well as 2 additional appearances in 2013 and 2015. Tim Duncan was also the NBA All-Star Game MVP in 2000. He's a 10-time All-NBA first-team player and is also a 3-time All-NBA second-team player. So when you think of accomplished players in the NBA and one of the greatest ever to put on the black and silver of a San Antonio Spurs uniform, Tim Duncan has to be easily on the top 3 of that list. The way he changed the game for forwards, many say he is the best power forward of all time, and you certainly, with the accolades here, you cannot just go over these accolades. I mean, what a phenomenal career Tim Duncan had. I certainly miss him in the game today, but that, my friends, is certainly a career that I would call accomplished. Now, let's move on to some Premier League action. We're going to get you caught up with some soccer here before Logan joins me in a bit. The Premier League standings are, as I mentioned, still continuing to take shape. Manchester City still holds a double-digit edge over their second-place in-city rival, Manchester United. Manchester City, with a total of 77 points on the season, they have a total of 24 wins, 5 draws, and only 4 losses. They are one of only 2 teams in the entire Premier League who have less than 5 losses. Manchester City, the second place, they also only have 4 losses. They have 67 points for a combined total of 19 wins, 10 draws, and 4 losses. For those of you who might be a little unsure of how the scoring works in the Premier League, if a team wins a game, they earn 3 points. If a team ties a game, each of the 2 teams gain 1 point, and then if there is a losing team, that losing team will receive 0 points. Now, third place, we have Leicester City. They are in third place with 59 points on the season thus far. They have 18 wins, 5 draws, and 9 losses. Only 1 point behind Leicester, however, is Chelsea. Chelsea really trying to get that third place standing. They have 58 points, 16 wins, 10 draws, and 7 losses on the season so far. And then to round out our top 5 this week in the Premier League includes West Ham. They have 55 points with 16 wins, 7 draws, and 10 losses on the season. Stats in the Premier League: Harry Kane and Mohamed Salah are still the top two goal scorers in the league. Kane does lead Salah in terms of goals scored, though, with 1 extra goal. Kane with 21 goals on the season. Mohamed Salah with a total of 20. Bruno Fernandes comes in at third place, the Manchester United player, with 16 goals on the season thus far. Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur comes in at fourth place with 15 goals, and then tied for fifth place, each with 14 goals, include Dominic Calvert-Lewin of Everton and then Patrick Bamford of Leeds United. Harry Kane still leading the league in assists with 13 assists to go along with those 21 goals I mentioned. Bruno Fernandes of Manchester United has 11 assists on the season thus far. Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City, 11 assists as well, tied for second. Jack Grealish comes in at fourth place, the Aston Villa player, with 10 assists on the season thus far. And then the only player in the top 5 in the assist category not to break the double-digit chart yet is Son Heung-min of Tottenham Hotspur, but you would expect he would do it soon. He has 9 assists on the season thus far. Let's get you updated with the matches going on in the Premier League today. We had a slate of games this weekend, including Liverpool taking on Newcastle. That was yesterday. Full-time final score, Liverpool and Newcastle tie 1-1. West Ham played Chelsea yesterday as well. Chelsea getting a much-needed victory to keep their third place ranking secure for right now, their fourth place ranking. They defeated West Ham by a final score of 1-0. Sheffield United also defeated Brighton by a final score of 1-0. Today, we had 2 matches that have already taken place on this lovely Sunday. Burnley took on the Wolves and handily defeated them by a final score of 4-0. And then Manchester United and Leeds United in their scores at 0-0. That's a good play on words if I do say so myself. We have 2 more games today as well. Aston Villa taking on West Brom. That'll be today at 2 p.m. And then Leicester City will be going up against Crystal Palace tomorrow. That'll be at 3 p.m. as well. And let's get you updated with the MLS as well, which is back in session. So excited that the Premier League standings are, really starting to take shape now. So excited to see what we have happening in that league later on. But right now, MLS season has finally kicked off, and that means the Columbus Crew season has officially kicked off. The Crew began their season on Sunday, April 18th, where they tied with the Philadelphia Union. The final score of that game, 0-0. The Columbus Crew have a couple of games in the CONCACAF Champions League that will be taking place within the next couple of weeks here. The next game for the Crew will be at 8:30 p.m. They'll be hosting Monterrey, a soccer team from Monterrey, Mexico, in the CONCACAF Champions League. That game will be played in Columbus. In between games, the Crew will have an away game in Montreal. That'll be Saturday, May 1st at 3 p.m., the first road game of the regular season for the Columbus Crew. And then Wednesday, May 5th, is the Crew's second matchup with Monterrey. That game will be played down in Mexico in the city of Monterrey. And that will be, as I mentioned, the second match between the two teams. And that will decide the Crew's future in the CONCACAF Champions League. After that second game against Monterrey, the Crew will then host DC United Saturday, May 8th, before heading back to Canada, this time in Toronto for another road game against Toronto FC. As of right now, the Crew only have one regular season game under their belt. They do have a point under their belt because they did tie with Philadelphia, as I mentioned, the final score of that game 0-0. And then we'll see what they do in the CONCACAF Champions League against Monterrey. They have a game in between their games with Monterrey, as I mentioned, a matchup with Montreal. And for all of you Southwest Ohio soccer fans, we're going to get into FC Cincinnati as well. So FC Cincinnati had their first game of the season last weekend as well. And guess what? They also tied, but they had goals in their game. Final score of FC Cincinnati's first regular season game this year was 2-2. The FC Cincinnati actually took a very early 2-0 lead in this game against Nashville. The game was on the road. Luciano Acosta scored in the 8th minute, and then only 12 minutes later, Brenner of FC Cincinnati converted a penalty kick. This gave FC Cincinnati a 2-0 lead. However, only 8 minutes after that penalty kick from Brenner in the 20th minute, Hander Caides scored for Nashville, and then in the 64th minute in the second half, Randall Leal scored to tie things up, and that would be the final goal of the game. So Cincinnati blow a 2-0 lead, but they still get a point out of it, so it's 1 point is better than no points if you look at it that way. And so each of the Ohio teams in the MLS start their regular season off with a draw. However, for FC Cincinnati, they had their second game of the season yesterday, and it was not pretty. They lost their second game of the season to NYCFC on the road. 5-0 the final score in that one. The next game for FC Cincinnati will be again on the road. It'll be against Orlando City. It'll be Saturday, May 1st at 7:30 p.m. The FC Cincinnati will then have their first home game of the season on May 16th. That'll be at 4 p.m. I'll continue to keep you updated with the MLS and Premier League as the MLS season rolls back around again, and then we'll keep you updated on the Premier League and the matches going on and how the standings are shaping up. But what's shaping up right now is we are going to be breaking down the Cleveland Cavaliers and the NBA. Sadly, I got confirmation about a couple minutes ago that Logan will not be able to join us this weekend. He actually has a tournament going on, so best of luck to him. Apparently, his schedule got shifted a little bit and wasn't able to make it with us this weekend. So no worries at all. So you've just got me for today, and we're going to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers first. And once again, a week where you feel good, and then a week where you don't feel great. Cavs had 3 games this week, 2 losses, 1 win. Now, the Cavs' first game of this week came against the Detroit Pistons, and this was a game I was very shocked to see after the first quarter. The first quarter score, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not kidding you, was 37-22 in favor of the Detroit Pistons. Now, when I look at the Detroit Pistons, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, where I don't see any great deal of talent on this team. They've got guys who work very hard and have a great coach in Dwayne Casey, but, they're just a very athletic team. They're not, in skill-wise, they're just not a very great team. And this was a game that the Pistons didn't even have their arguably their best player, Jeremy Grant. So I was very concerned after seeing that the Cavs gave up 37 points in one quarter, and then they only scored 22 of their own. However, the Cavs did bounce back, especially in that second quarter, 31 points to 25 points to the Pistons. It was a rather competitive third quarter. Cavs outscored Detroit 23-22, and then in the fourth quarter they outscored the Pistons 29-25. The Cavs roared their way back in that second half, especially down the stretch. They cut the lead multiple times in that second half. Just were never able to quite retain a lead. and then they eventually lost the game to Detroit 109-105. In terms of box score for the Cavs, Colin Sexton and Darius Garland, they combined for 51 points. This was the story of the week. Garland and Sexton combining for a lot of Cleveland's points, almost half of Cleveland's points per game, and that just scares me a little bit. Jared Allen did not have a strong game at all, only 5 points and 5 rebounds in 28 minutes against the Pistons. Kevin Love was okay, 15 points, 30 minutes, really for someone of Kevin Love's caliber is really nothing to brag about. Taurean Prince and Isaiah Hartenstein only combined for 24 points. This was really a night where just the supporting cast was off. Dean Wade, who has gotten a lot of minutes now, had no points in 18 minutes. Matt Dellavedova, only 4 points in limited playing time in only 13 minutes. So this was just a game where I saw the Cavs supporting cast just did not bring it against the Pistons. And the Pistons, you could tell, were hungry for that win. And they do defeat the Cavs 109-105. Cavs then returned home to face off against the Chicago Bulls, a team who defeated them this past Saturday, 106-96. So the Cavs definitely had some feelings of wanting to get some revenge against the Chicago Bulls, one of their Central Division rivals, and they certainly did that. The Cavs, after a horrid first quarter against the Pistons I was mentioning, they turned the tide. They outscored Chicago in this game 34-12. This game was played at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland, and the Cavs opened up the game in front of their home fans on the right foot. They outscored Chicago, as I mentioned, 34-12, and then they poured it on in the third quarter as well. 38 points for the Cavs in the third quarter. Chicago did outscore them in the fourth, 33-22, but at that point it was really just garbage time. And the Cavs walk away with a win against the Chicago Bulls, 121-105. On the Cavs box score side, much more balanced scoring. Colin Sexton and Darius Garland combined for 55 points, but Larry Nance Jr. also put in 10 points in 22 minutes. Kevin Love, 15 points in 26 minutes, which does sound a little bit better in a win, you have to say. Dean Wade, again, struggling, no points in 10 minutes, but Isaiah Hartenstein able to make up for that deficit. He had Isaiah Hartenstein had 10 points in 16 minutes, also to go along with 6 rebounds. Jared Allen, didn't, once again, not a great scoring performance, but he did grab 9 boards for the Cavs, which were much needed, especially when they were going on that huge run in the first quarter, which to me really sealed the deal. After that first quarter and the energy the Cavs were bringing, I was very pleased with their performance, and I was about 95% sure they were going to get that win. Looking on the Bulls side of things, no player scored more than 20 points. The leading scorer for the Bulls this past Wednesday against the Cavs was Lauri Markkanen. He finished with 16 points in 21 minutes. Nikola Vucevic, only 9 points in 25 minutes. I must say, ladies and gentlemen, I am a little bit disappointed with the Chicago Bulls thus far. I believed with the acquisition of Vucevic and Al-Farouq Amino that this was definitely going to be a team that was on the rise and getting to a playoff spot. But right now, the Bulls are in 11th place. They're 1.5 games behind the Washington Wizards, who've actually made a huge push. They've won 7 in a row. But going back to Chicago, they're 25-35 right now after losing their most recent game against the Miami Heat. They're 3-7 in their last 10. I am nervous if I'm a Chicago Bulls fan because I thought this was going to be the season they were going to, make that playoff push with the acquisition of Vucevic. Obviously Zach LaVine has been hurt, so maybe with him coming back that'll help shape things up. But I expected the Bulls, after that acquisition of Vucevic, not to be 25-35 right now. So if you're Chicago, adjustments need to be made, and they need to be made now. If I'm looking at the Cavs side of things, there's no way they're making the playoffs. They have a record now of 21-38. They're 4-6 in their last 10. But Chicago, who's only 10 games under 500, still about 13-14 games left in the NBA season. They can make that playoff push But Zach LaVine, I would think, has to come back healthy. Now let's go back to the Cavs. Their most recent game was this past Friday in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they fell to the Hornets by a final score of 108-102. And I would have to say, ladies and gentlemen, that this would be a gut-wrenching loss for the Cavs. The Cavs outscored Charlotte 35-26 in the second quarter, and they had a 55-48 lead heading into halftime. But then Charlotte scores 30 points in each quarter of the second half, combined for 60 points total in the half alone. And the Cavs scored a grand total of only 47 points in the second half. So Charlotte outscores them in the second half 60-47. And that was all thanks to Miles Bridges, who put on an absolute show for the Hornets. Bridges finishes with 25 points in 36 minutes, also to go along with 10 rebounds, finishes with that double-double. P.J. Washington, another strong, big for Charlotte, finished with 25 as well, to go along with 5 rebounds, all in 37 minutes. And then Terry Rozier, Northeast Ohio native, finishing with 25 points and 6 assists, all in 37 minutes. This was a game where Devontae Graham was struggling. Only 8 points for Graham. He did have 10 assists, but we really know Devontae Graham as a scorer, especially if you're familiar with the Hornets roster. But 75 of the 108 points come from Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, and Terry Rozier. What I really like about this Charlotte team is that they have 2 very talented bigs who really can do it all. I'm looking at P.J. Washington, who has some range. He's very athletic and strong and can maneuver his way in the paint. I also really love watching Miles Bridges. He is a human highlight reel. I mean, his athleticism, his ability to shoot from the perimeter is really something that I find very, very critical in today's NBA game, especially for a forward or center. If we look at the Cavs side of things, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton combined for 56 Cavalier points. Once again, there's 55 Cavalier points. So 55 out of the 102 points come from Garland and Sexton. So you have to think again. The supporting cast, the inconsistency is what scares me a little bit here. Jared Allen had his best game since he's been back from the concussion protocol. 15 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds, and an assist against Charlotte Friday night. Isaac Okoro struggled, 3 points, 5 rebounds, and only 4 assists. Larry Nance Jr. Struggled as well against Charlotte, only 5 points in 27 minutes. Isaiah Hartenstein, 10 points in 15 minutes. Dean Wade has only scored 2 points this week. I mean, it's this supporting cast that really needs to step it up, especially guys like Larry Nance Jr., Isaac Okoro, and even Kevin Love. Kevin Love only had 12 points in 27 minutes. That's not going to cut it for this team because let me tell you something right now. If you're expecting Darius Garland and Colin Sexton to carry all the weight, it's not going to work, especially against teams like Charlotte, who have those bigs that I was mentioning, Miles Bridges, P.J. Washington, and even athletic guards and skilled guards like Terry Rozier, and Devontae Graham. Yes, the Cavs' backcourt in Garland and Sexton has a lot of skill, but they need help. They can't just do it all by themselves. And we've seen performances where the Cavs the Cavs supporting cast has been great. Guys like Dean Wade, Taurean Prince, Delly, even Larry Nance Jr. too is a great leader for this team. They have stepped up. We've seen them do it. The problem is they have to start doing it more consistently. Now, as I mentioned, the Cavs record, they're not going to be a playoff team this year, sadly. I know they started off the season 3-0, but it's sadly not going to happen. They're 21-38. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games. They're 18.5 games out of first place. And they are, if I do the math here, they're 5 games out of that 10th spot, which would be which is part of the play-in tournament. Right now, the Wizards are in that spot. Speaking of the Cavs and the Wizards, they're going to play tonight, Sunday night, at 7 p.m. That game will be at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. The Washington Wizards, who are on a winning streak, they've won their last 7 games. They're currently 26-33. They'll be looking to secure a play-in spot and and by defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight, one step closer to that playoff spot for Washington. But I've still got to say, Washington definitely one of the more disappointing teams in the season so far. I thought this was going to be a team with, guys like Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. I thought they were going to be a top 5 seed in the East with that backcourt, and they have a decent supporting cast as well. So we'll see what the Wizards will be able to do tonight against the Cavs. We'll see how the Cavs can compete in these next 2 games. These next 2 games for the Cavs will be on the road. As I mentioned, tonight in Washington, D.C. Then the Cavs will be heading to Tampa, Florida for a matchup with the Toronto Raptors. That game will be tomorrow, Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Magic will then come to Cleveland to take on the Cavaliers at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse on Wednesday, April 28th at 7 p.m. And then that will begin a 5-game homestand for the Cavs, which will include games against the Washington Wizards this upcoming Friday, the Miami Heat, the Phoenix Suns, and the Portland Trail Blazers. Then after their game against the Raptors, the next Cavs road game won't be until May 7th when they head to Dallas to take on the Mavericks. Let's get you updated with the standings, overall standings in the NBA. The Brooklyn Nets have officially taken the first seed in the Eastern Conference. They have a record of 40-20 because the Philadelphia 76ers, who have been in first place for the longest time in the East, have finally started to show some cracks. They are only 17-14 on the road, with their worst loss of the season coming yesterday afternoon against the Milwaukee Bucks, where they were manhandled by Giannis Antetokounmpo, 132-94. This is a game that got out of hand midway through the third quarter, and the Sixers have now lost 4 in a row and are only 5-5 in their last 10 games. That means they now have a record of 39-21, so record's nothing to sneeze at right now, but they're still second place in the Eastern Conference. Milwaukee has won their last 2 games. They're 37-22 right now. They're 2.5 games behind that first place spot, which the Nets currently have. And how about this, ladies and gentlemen? The New York Knicks have the longest winning streak in the Eastern Conference. They have they've won 9 games in a row, 9-1 in their last 10 games. They're 34-27. They're 13-17 on the road, but they're 21-10 at Madison Square Garden. That is an unbelievable. I mean, what an unbelievable season in general for the New York Knicks. If I had got the chance to vote, if I was an analyst and can vote for most improved player, Julius Randle is getting my vote. I mean, the way he has stepped up this season for the Knicks, after the horrible season they've had these last few years, especially last year, what a way to bounce back, from not being in the bubble, now being 4th place in the Eastern Conference. If the playoffs were to start today, ladies and gentlemen, the Knicks would have, they would hold home court in the first round at Madison Square Garden. And how about that? What if the Knicks had a Game 7 at Madison Square Garden? It's been so long since that's happened. But, I mean, how awesome of an experience would that be for a sports fan? If we keep going down the line, the Atlanta Hawks, Trae Young and company. Trae Young's been out with an injury these last few games, but the Hawks are still 33-27. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. The Celtics, who have been playing better basketball as of late, are 7-3 on the season. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games, 32-28 on the season overall. Miami comes in at 7th place, 32-29. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games, and then the Charlotte Hornets, who just defeated the Cavs, 29-30 on the season thus far. They're 4-6 in their last 10. Let's look at the Western Conference now. The Utah Jazz, they actually lost their most recent game to the Minnesota Timberwolves by a final score of 101-96. For the Utah Jazz, Donovan Mitchell still out with an injury. Bogdanovic had a great night against the Timberwolves last night, 30 points in 36 minutes for Bogdanovic. However, Jazz could not get it done, but they still hold first place in the Western Conference with a record of 44-16. The Phoenix Suns are only a game and a half behind them, though. They're in second place. They have a record of 42-17. They look elite. I'm really nervous to see who gets Phoenix in that first round, because that is not going to be an easy matchup whatsoever. The Clippers are in third place, LA, with a record of 43-19. They've won their last 4 games. They're 9-1 in their last 10 games. That's the best record for teams in their last 10 games in the Western Conference. The Denver Nuggets are 39-21 and are going to try to make a big playoff push without, their star point guard Jamal Murray. The Lakers have lost 3 in a row. Their most recent loss coming last night to the Dallas Mavericks by 15 points. They're 35-25 now. Anthony Davis, however, has returned in his last couple of games. These against the Dallas Mavericks. Davis returned this past Thursday, only had 4 points in 17 minutes, but is still obviously trying to maneuver himself back on the court. But last night, much better game for Davis, 17 points in 28 minutes to go along with 3 rebounds and 3 assists. So obviously still getting his feet wet a little bit here. The Lakers are going to need AD to get his feet wet fast. Because they still have a slew of games coming. They have games against the Magic, the Wizards, the Kings, the Raptors, the Nuggets. They play the Clippers on Thursday, May 6th, though. The Lakers, they want to, keep their heads above water and, remain at least in the top 5 in the Western Conference, because I will certainly say this, you want to have home court advantage at least in the first round if you're the Lakers, because the Clippers are coming. Phoenix is not going away. Obviously, the Jazz can shoot the lights out. So we'll see. I've been hearing rumors that LeBron will be able to return at the end of the month. That would be a much-needed boost for the LA Lakers, who at least have one piece of the puzzle back with LeBron and Anthony Davis, because Davis has returned. As we continue on down the Western Conference standings, the Dallas Mavericks take 6th place. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games, 33-26 on the season thus far. The Portland Trail Blazers, Damian Lillard and company, have lost 4 in a row, but they're still 32-27. They have 7th place in the Western Conference now. They're at 7th place in the conference. And then finally, in 8th place are the Memphis Grizzlies, who are 30-28, right there on that 500 line. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They won their most recent game. That game was against the Portland Trail Blazers, against Damian Lillard and company. They won 130-28. Ja Morant put in 33 points in 36 minutes. The Rookie of the Year had a sensational bounce-back season thus far after that early injury he suffered in the season in about December or early January, if I'm not mistaken. And he is continuing to push the Grizzlies into a playoff spot. Last year in the bubble, the Grizzlies were so close. They had the 8th seed for the longest time, but they actually lost to Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers in the bubble, and the Blazers ended up taking that 8th seed in that play-in game in Orlando. So, the Grizzlies have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, especially when it comes to facing off against the Portland Trail Blazers, and that showed last night, Friday night, when the Grizzlies beat them 130-128. Top scorers in the NBA right now, Stephen Curry has been on an unbelievable run. He is just shooting the lights out. Warriors point guard, averaging about 31 points per game, but right behind him is Bradley Beal of the Washington Wizards, averaging about 31 per game as well. Damian Lillard, Luka Doncic, both averaging around 29 points per game, with Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks 5th in scoring, averaging about 28 per game. Clint Capella leading the league in rebounds at about 15 rebounds per game. Russell Westbrook leading the league in assists at about 11 per game. Rudy Gobert leads the league in field goal percentage, the Jazz center, shooting it at about 68%. Jared Allen of the Cavs is in third place, shooting with field goal percentage of about 64%. Steph Curry already has 266 three-pointers made. He leads the league in the amount of three-pointers made. Buddy Hield of the Sacramento Kings is in a distant second at 232 made threes per game. Joe Ingles leads the league in three-point percentage, shooting the three at about 49%. It's so phenomenal. That's what I'm telling you. The Jazz know how to shoot the basketball, and that's going to be a problem for teams moving forward in the playoffs. So now we've concluded our NBA news, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time to get back to baseball. We're going to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Indians, who have struggled in their last few games thus far. The last time the Indians won this week was this Sunday against the Cincinnati Reds. The Indians won that game. Final score of the game 6-3. Indians, after the first inning, had a 1-0 lead. They then poured it on in the fourth inning, scoring 3 additional runs to take a 4-0 lead into the fifth inning. Cincinnati would score a couple of runs in the fifth, only to be negated by 2 more additional runs by the Indians in the seventh inning. And the final score of the game, 6-3 in favor of the Indians. But after that win, as I mentioned, it's been all downhill for the Indians. The Cleveland has had 4 home games thus far and have lost all 4 of them. It started this past Tuesday against the Chicago White Sox, where the Indians lost that game 8-5, and then in this 4-game home series against the New York Yankees at Progressive Field, we've had 3 games thus far, and the Indians have lost all 3 of them. They lost the first one this past Thursday, 6-3, the final score of that game. The Yankees then defeated the Indians again Friday, April 23rd, by a final score of 5-3, and then the most recent game for the Indians came yesterday. Yesterday, the Yankees defeat Cleveland 2-1. Cleveland actually had a 1-0 lead heading into the fifth inning after scoring a run in the fourth inning, but then the Yankees, who have had a kind of up and down year thus far, not the start many people were thinking they were going to have, they bounced back in that fifth inning and scored 2 runs and win the game by a final score of 2-1. So what has been the problem for the Cleveland Indians, ladies and gentlemen? Because it seems to me that the overall problem is they're just not able to establish a consistent defense. Now, I understand the Yankees, the White Sox. These are obviously quality teams, but the Indians have to be able to have more consistent batting, because it's not like they're giving up, 10, 11, or even 12 runs a game. The most runs they gave up this week was this past Tuesday against Chicago, where they gave up 8 runs. And they're scoring, too. They've scored in all their losses thus far. So if the Indians can really find a way to establish a defensive consistency and, keep themselves, if the offense stays the same, I think the Indians have a better shot at winning games, but they have to be able to create a defensive consistency that will allow them, to not have teams pull ahead against them, especially midway through the game. You don't want to go down early in the fourth or fifth inning, because you don't want that tone to be set early on in the game. So upcoming schedule for the Cleveland Indians includes today, they have their final home match against the New York Yankees today at 1:10 p.m., so about 30 minutes from now. The Indians will then have 3 more home games. They'll have a series this time with the Minnesota Twins. It all starts tomorrow at 6:10 p.m. The Indians will then head back to Chicago. Their first road game will be on Friday, April 30th of this week. It'll be against the White Sox. They'll have 3 games in Chicago and then a total of 5 games in Kansas City. where they will be taking on the Royals. So Indians definitely have seen these opponents many times this season already. So we'll see if they can really be able to almost like a playoff series basically understand the schemes and the techniques of what their opponents are doing, and they can definitely walk away with some wins again if they establish that defensive consistency. And obviously they need to score some runs to win the games. As of right now, the Cleveland Indians are third place in the American League Central Division. They have an overall record of 8-11. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. They have both losing records at home and on the road. They're only 4-5 in the confines of Progressive Field and 4-6 on the road. The Indians will have a chance to really improve that road record when they head to Chicago and Kansas City for matchups with the Black Sox and the Royals. Now we're going to talk about the NFL Draft, which, guess what, is right here in Cleveland. It will be taking place April 29th through May 1st on all ABC, ESPN, the major sports networks. So check your local listings for what will be going on, but it will be right here in Cleveland. So excited to see so many top prospect quarterbacks in this draft. Now, I did some research and went to CBS Sports and got a panel of a few NFL analysts, including Ryan Wilson, Chris Trapazzo, Josh Edwards, and Pete Prisco. Now, all four of these analysts have Trevor Lawrence going at first place to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is no surprise right there. I think everyone and their grandmother knows that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the first pick of the NFL draft. So it really all starts at the second pick. And all of these four analysts have Zach Wilson, the quarterback out of BYU, who's a junior, to go to the New York Jets. Obviously, we know the Jets traded Sam Darnold to the Carolina Panthers, so they are in need of a quarterback. They will be, looks like, I would think they would draft Zach Wilson. And another couple of quarterbacks who are in the discussion for third place include Mac Jones out of Alabama and Justin Fields out of Ohio State. Now, the San Francisco 49ers have the third pick in the draft this year, and it seems like they're going to be going for a quarterback. Obviously, they still have Jimmy Garoppolo, but with him aging, it might be time to find another quarterback who Garoppolo can mentor, and then that quarterback can be the face of the franchise. The question is, will it be Mac Jones or Justin Fields? Obviously, all of us Ohio State fans would be super excited to see Justin Fields, no matter where he plays. I would be very excited to see him in a San Francisco uniform, what he can bring to the table, especially with his young age and the caliber player he is. He's a phenomenal quarterback. Now, the Atlanta Falcons have the fourth pick, and many analysts believe, all these four analysts actually have Kyle Pitts being drafted by the Falcons. The tight end out of Florida, who is a junior, is the projected fourth pick of the NFL draft this year. So those are your top four picks. Let's take a trip all the way down to the 26th pick. And why 26, you ask? Well, guess what? That's the pick the Cleveland Browns have in the first round of the draft this year. And there's a lot of discussion of who the Browns are going to choose. Three of the four analysts in this panel I mentioned believe that Christian Barmore, a sophomore out of Alabama, will be selected by the Browns. He is a defensive lineman, and when it comes to defense, Browns can certainly improve on that. They have the offensive firepower. If you can secure that defense, then this is definitely a team that can compete for the Super Bowl. One of the analysts, however, does believe that the Browns could also draft Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame, a senior who is a linebacker. So Browns are definitely looking for a defender in this upcoming NFL draft, which is definitely the right decision. That's what you want to hear if you are a Browns fan, because if they, as I mentioned, if they can, improve this defense, then this is certainly a team that I see, quite honestly, being first place in the AFC North. That's right. If the Browns have a great defense, or even an above-average defense, I believe that they will be the best team in the AFC North, even better than the Baltimore Ravens. And that's something Logan and I were discussing last week. I believe that, you obviously can't count the Steelers out, but I really believe that the battle of the AFC North this year is going to be between the Browns and the Ravens. So the Browns can, draft one of these defensive players. They can that's certainly an improvement in the defense overall, and we'll see how that will affect them moving forward as they look to contend for a Super Bowl. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I do apologize for the last-minute cancellation that Logan had to play in a tournament. So wishing him the best of luck. Hope he's doing well. Hopefully he will be back next week to join us. I'm sure he will. He's very prompt, does a very wonderful job for us. It's just one of those weeks where you're very busy. Totally understand. But we will be back with you very soon for our next episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. But before I go, I want to remind you where you can access all of my work, which includes other episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show, as well as some other media work I've been doing for NordoniaHills.news. So, if you're on NordoniaHills.news, make sure you head to the Contributors tab and find my name. My name is the second one down. It's Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you find that, just click on my name, and then you'll be able to access all of my work that I've been doing for NordoniaHills.news. You'll be able to find previous episodes of the podcast, sports articles, and even some of the play-by-play broadcast games I did for Nordonia Boys basketball this year on NordoniaHills.news. We live streamed some of the games. Some of the games are recorded, but nonetheless, all those games are there for you to watch and see if you want to soak in some memories of the Nordonia basketball team this year. They had a great season, a lot of very skilled players on that squad. So if you haven't seen them play, you should definitely check it out because, and guess what? You also hear me broadcasting the games, which makes it that much better. Also, if you are on Twitter, then you can also access all of my work just as if you were on NordoniaHills.news. If you're on Twitter, just type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, then, or you can type in my Twitter handle, which is @NordoniaSports. Once you do that, you just click on, just type enter, click on my name, whatever you need to do, and then you'll be able to get to my Twitter page, which has all my podcast episodes, all my broadcasts, all the links to my sports articles are on that Twitter page as well. You can also take the Cleveland Sports Show with you on Spotify. That's right. If you're on the go, don't worry. You can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you. Just type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you'll be able to access all of my episodes to the Cleveland Sports Show for you to listen to at your own personal convenience. How awesome is that? Additionally, if you're on YouTube and you want to get your Cleveland sports cravings fixed, well, guess what? You can access the Cleveland Sports Show on the NordoniaHills.news YouTube page as well. If you're on the NordoniaHills.news YouTube page, you'll be able to access all of my episodes to the Cleveland Sports Show, as well as the broadcasts of the basketball games I did for the Nordonia Knights. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my latest episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Hopefully Logan will be able to join us for our next episode. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, I know the weather has not been great this weekend, but I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. Take care, and we'll see you next week for another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Stay safe, everyone. Take care, and thank you so much for listening.